Is Azeroth actually flat? Now, hear me out, because I know what you're thinking. You stupid idiot. Of course it's round. After all, in Outland, you can see other planets in the sky which are obviously round, and the scale model of Azeroth in Ulduar is clearly a spherical shape. Well, let's look at all the evidence. If you open your map in-game, what do you see? A very round, disc-like shape with all the continents on them. If the planet was round, don't you think the continents would be curved a little bit more? Now, I know what you're thinking, that's just a map trick to show all the land masses in a convenient manner. So I'll leave that at that and head on to my next point. Have you ever tried flying around the world? After all, if it's a round shape, you'd be able to go to the other side eventually. But instead, the world just gets darker and darker and you die from fatigue. Fatigue similar to flying off the edge of a flat world into nothingness of space. But what about gravity, you say? Gravity would render a flat disk the size of Azeroth impossible, as it would collapse back into itself and form another spherical shape. But what if gravity doesn't exist? Wouldn't we all just float off into space? Well, not if Azeroth was continuously floating upwards. And if Azeroth was always continuously floating upwards, how would it be able to rotate around the sun? And if it was just a disk, wouldn't it be daytime all the time? Well, yes, assuming the sun in-game works the same way ours does. But if the sun was only a couple dozen miles wide and rotated around the top of Azeroth like a spotlight, you could simulate the same effects as planet Earth orbiting the sun. And what about all the water in the ocean? If the planet was flat, wouldn't it just float off the side and spill out? Well, obviously it would. If it wasn't for the ice. You see, space is cold. All meteors that are big enough to not break apart completely in the atmosphere and crash into Earth are little more than warm to the touch immediately after being covered in fire from entry. If you ever see a meteorite freshly in a crater, go right ahead and pick it up. It'll just be warm at best. With the same logic, the water in the outside of Azeroth would have long ago frozen over, creating a nice barricade keeping all the water in the oceans from falling out into space with ease. Now, I know what you're thinking at this point. Oh, you're so right. How have I ever been so blind to all of it? You're such a genius. To which I'd say, well, I'm not just a genius. I'm also very humble and handsome. But for those of you still not convinced, let me pile on the hard evidence. There are 6 other planets in Ulduar. 7 if you count Azeroth. 7. There are 7 colors in a rainbow. Green is a color of the rainbow. The number value for the color green is 009900. 009900 is the same number if written out backwards and forwards. The word reviver is a palindrome. A palindrome is a word or sentence that reads the same forward as it does backwards. Algalon could be considered the reviver of the Titans. Algalon has 18 stars that make up his body, excluding his swords. Algalon's name, Algalon the Observer, is exactly 18 letters long. 18 plus 18 is 36. There are 4 observers in Ulduar. 36 divided by 4 is 9. Ulduar came out in the year 2009, or to be more precise, April 15th, 2009. Maisie Williams was born on April 15th. She plays the popular character Arya Stark in Game of Thrones. In the 2nd season of Game of Thrones, her character goes missing from the Lannisters. The 2nd season of Game of Thrones aired in 2012. Mist of Pandaria was released in 2012. If you take a closer look at the globe Algalon spawns, you'll notice that the continent of Pandaria is also missing. Coincidence? I don't think so. What does this all prove? Well, that the so-called globes in Ulduar are fake. And until you can build a rocket and go into space and check for yourself, there's just too much evidence that Azeroth is in fact a flat disk, and not a round sphere.